Welcome to the Tough Decisions Daily Show with your hosts, Dan and Danae Hanford. As entrepreneurs and real estate investors, we are faced with tough decisions on a daily basis. These tough decisions can either make us or break us. On this show, you will hear from highly successful people sharing their stories behind tough decisions that they have had to make along their journey of success. In every episode, you will be able to learn from the thought processes behind the tough decisions that were made. Some of these decisions will have amazing outcomes and some not so much. So without further ado, your hosts, Dan and Danae.
On the podcast with us today is Jay Campbell. He is an Amazon best-selling author of 3 change-making books in the optimization healthcare space. He's also an entrepreneur and is the co-owner of OptimizedLifeNutrition.com and MonicaDiazTeam.com. Welcome to the show, Jay.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure, and I'm humbled, privileged, and honored to be on your show.
Hi, Jay. To get started today, we want you to tell our listeners a little bit about how you got started as an entrepreneur and some of the different ventures that you've had and experiences that you've had as an entrepreneur.
No problem. Again, thank you guys for having me on your show. I'll give you a really, 100,000-foot high-level summary. I myself was what I like to classify as a wage slave until I was 40 and a half years of age. I rose up the corporate ladder in the spaces that I were in, which was advertising and marketing, and eventually maneuvered into the digital automotive space, where I was like a senior level salesperson and then also a senior vice president. And at 41, I had kind of an awakening. I went through, the people that do know me, which probably are not many people in your audience, but I'm very, very open and honest and transparent about my story. But at 41, I went through a very traumatic divorce. My children were kidnapped from me. I lost essentially everything but my spirit and drive to continue. So I'm 47 years old. So it's been about 6 years. I met my current wife and my business partner in the real estate side of things. And she is just such an amazing, amazing woman. She was a realtor at the time. She was probably doing 30, 35 transactions a year. And my background at that time, like I said, was in digital marketing, and it was kind of in automotive. And we met on Match.com. And after dating for 4 months, she said, everything that you do is everything I need, because, I'm a successful realtor, but I don't have the marketing stuff figured out. So to make a long story short, we got in business together after getting in bed together. How's that? In 2012. And after dating for like 4 or 5 months, it was definitely a leap of faith because, like I said, I'd been a wage slave my whole life. I did have a side business that I'd never really made any money on. It was a nutritional supplement company. And I really just did it for my buddies and myself to buy products at wholesale costs. But I was not an entrepreneur by any stretch of the imagination. So when I jumped into business with her at the end of 2012, it was very trying for me mentally because, again, I was so used to, that steady twice check or sometimes 3 checks a month income that I'd had for 20 years previous to my life. And now I'm all of a sudden in the non-wage slave hustle of being an entrepreneur. And, a lot of change had to happen for me. But thankfully, I was very, very good at what I did. And my wife happened to be also amazing at what she did. And right place at right time. Our first year in business together in 2013, we did 96 transactions, almost $40 million in production, and almost netted $1 million, right? Now, from where I had come from a year and a half before, I was nearly bankrupt. I owed the IRS like $16,000. So, very amazing, revelational, like at the bottom of the basement, to the top of Mount Everest in literally like 15 or 16 months. So wow. Since then, her and I, you mentioned the 3 books that I've written. We've gotten involved in a lot of different things in the healthcare space. I like to call it the optimization space, which is kind of what we coined about 2 years ago, because if you guys look at healthcare today, it's mostly sick care. I have doctors that I work with, very high level doctors that also refer to it as illness medicine. So kind of where we're at right now is we're teaching people how to optimize their health. And we're teaching people how to be proactive and to stop becoming reliant on the old, completely destroyed model of, waiting until you got sick and then going to a doctor and then, evaluating you. And then obviously, as we know, it gets worse from there. They just start prescribing drugs. They never treat the underlying symptoms, and on and on and on it goes. So I've been very blessed. As you said, I've written 3 books. It started in 2015. Then I wrote another book, 1 book last year, and then 1 book that should have come out last year that finally came out in February of this year because I had a lot of editing. And both of them are bestsellers on Amazon. In fact, my book right now, that's a Testosterone Optimization Therapy Bible, is still a top 5 book in men's health so far for the year. And it actually launched on February 1st. So just again, very blessed, very fortunate. My wife and I still do have the residential real estate team, which has also grown significantly. We now have 10 people, including our sales director and our transaction coordinator. And then we had some ISAs, but we just recently let them go. So, just to answer your question, Danae, it's been an amazing run for me going from being, like I said, a wage slave, working for the man, to now becoming complete controller and shaper of my destiny.
I love that background. I have so many questions to kind of dive into in regards to that. One question I have for you is about your wife. And does she actually help you with the other businesses as well, with the the optimization, healthcare space businesses that you have, or is she primarily just focused on the residential real estate?
So it's actually a great question. So yes and no. Monica actually is an amazing physical condition. She's 46 years old. She's given birth to 3 children, and then she also raises my 2 daughters who are 10 and 8. So technically we kind of manage 5 children. But she does indirectly help me with the other businesses, because guess what? If she wasn't allowing me to have the time to run the other businesses and do all the other stuff, it wouldn't happen. So power to her and credit to her in that regard. But as far as direct involvement, she is just starting to get involved because she wrote the chapter 19 from the Testosterone Optimization Therapy Bible, which is actually on women's hormone optimization, with another physician who happens to be a brilliant doctor from Tulsa, Oklahoma, by the name of Dr. Jim Meehan. And they are actually right now writing a book, which I can tell you guys both very, very transparently that it will be the best book ever written for women on optimizing their hormones. And then my wife is very, very spiritually empowered. She does a lot of internal work and has done a lot of internal work. Her part of that book will literally be like teaching women who are, moms, successful business people, and wives on how to manage it all and keep it all together and still, obviously, what I would say is maintain a bang and fit body, but then also be completely strong internally.
Well, during these transitions, I'm sure you probably have had many tough decisions that you've had to make along the way, especially during that transition period. I'd like for you to expound a little bit on 2 types of tough decisions, maybe one tough decision that you made earlier on and that did not have such a very good outcome, and
Sure.
Then maybe another tough decision that you did, maybe, that had a really good outcome, or maybe it was different than what you'd expected, but it was still really positive.
Yeah, for sure. So the first one would definitely be when I first came into business to work with Monica. She had a lot of relationships with people that I felt like were ripping her off. She was spending a lot of money on personal development coaching, which it was very foreign and immune to at that point in time in my life. And I made her cancel a lot of those things because, again, I was just, I'm a very hard-nosed business guy. I look at pro formas and I can analyze, the analytics and all that kind of stuff. And I can tell you right away, what's bad, what's good, what needs to go. But what I didn't understand was the personal coaching and the empowerment was so important to her. And so I limited a lot of those things. And I think it actually it was a bad decision in hindsight, looking back on it, because it kind of cut her off from one of her big drivers, which I recognize now later. And now she's again, back into that. So that would be a thing that I made a big mistake on, because I was really looking at cutting costs, which I did. But the long-term ramifications of her not doing the empowerment and not continuing on what she had built on for the previous 10 years was a mistake. From a positive side of things, I think if I can just compare it to real estate, because my optimization, my healthcare stuff, is really new for us. It's really been 3 years since it's really taken off, and now it's absolutely explosive. And we could talk a little bit about that later in the thing. But a thing that I did that was very, very risky was when I first got into business with Monica. Like I told you guys, she was doing 30 to 34 transactions a year, which again, compared to the average real estate agent residential in America is, top 1%. But she didn't understand, or the people that she worked with didn't really understand the importance and the power of building an online brand and building an online reputation so that, for the future, she could actually work less from an actual physical hours in, grueling, grunt work like door knocking and phone calling and prospecting and doing all that stuff. So I took a big chance. I hired my crews that I had worked with, in the past when I was in the digital automotive space working for the man, to really build out our brand and to build out our online reputation. And, looking back on that, it was the smartest thing we ever did, because now 6 years later, we have in Southern California right now, we're in the top 7 for all real estate teams with total 5-star reviews. In fact, we're so well recognized in our 25-mile PMA in Southern California that we do 0 external prospecting, and we average between 70 and 80 transactions a year.
Wow, that is amazing. Let's step back for real quick and go back to the one that didn't have a very good outcome. So I want to, look at that a little bit closer to see if we can,
Sure.
maybe learn something from that. So when you made that decision to kind of stop all those prior ventures, was it after you guys gotten married, or were you guys still in the dating process before all that happened?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I appreciate you asking it. We were not married yet. So you could even throw in, it was even a more risky maneuver. So where I was in my life when Monica and I first started dating is I was still essentially in a very dark place. I was literally about 6.5, 7 months post-divorce. I still was estranged from my children. I still had the felony charges that I had against me that were fabricated were dropped, but I still had outstanding misdemeanor charges that prevented me from getting a job, right? Because I had a very esteemed reputation in my space, but because I had the charges, I wasn't going to be able to pass a background test back here in 2012. So when I came to Los Angeles, I met Monica, like I said, on Match.com in Los Angeles. I had my tail kind of tucked. Now, just so you guys know, so the story makes sense, I had been in LA for 18 years prior, and then I moved to Vegas for 2.5 years, and that's when my marriage unwound and had to come back to Los Angeles after everything that happened to me that was negative. But we were not married. We had been dating for 4 months, and then when she asked me, she said, would you be interested in working with me? It was a big stretch for me because I did have a job, and it was a decent job. It wasn't the type of job that I'd been used to having, but obviously with the charges against me and stuff, I was kind of in a position where I needed to work and make a decent income because I also had to pay my ex and child support payments. So looking at it, it was probably, if I had my druthers and I was looking at it on a performance, on an actual pro forma, and it would have been it probably wouldn't have made any sense because I just didn't have enough data and background on Monica. We had only been dating for 4 months, but something told me, my inner guide, my inner knowing, internal resonation, that it was the right thing to do. And I did it. Now, to answer the question, the bad choices I made was when I started looking at her financials and started looking at everything to tie it all up, I didn't realize all the personal, development and coaching that she was doing was so important to her. I just looked at it as an expense that was unnecessary and unneeded and needed to be axed. So I did. And, like I said, learning years later and seeing where we are now, because both of us are massively involved in spiritual development and personal development, I know that it was a mistake because it probably, where she was at that time and on the path that she was, it probably, I wouldn't say it degraded or detracted from where she was, but it definitely probably stalled her in the path that she was on.
Well, and it sounds to me like she was doing that, or that piece of her business maybe might not have, looked good on a balance sheet, but it actually helped her from her passion standpoint.
Absolutely, 100%. And it's so funny because one of her spiritual gurus and mentors, which is now literally one of mine, and it actually happens to be Matthew Ferry. And of course, you guys know who Mike Ferry is. So it's Matthew Ferry is Mike Ferry's son. And, he's very big now in the spiritual, self-improvement community here in Southern California. And both Monica and I, Monica coaches with him directly, or did. And I just kind of coach with him indirectly. I'm actually a little bit involved in helping them and advising them on launching their book because they have an amazing book that's coming out later this year. And I have gone to a couple of their conferences. They're called Breakthrough to Bliss. But just knowing what that man is about and what he has done for Monica, and knowing that what I did back then was kind of to cut her off because she was involved with some people in Mike Ferry that I just felt like were not the right people for her. And she admits that being true too, but it definitely positioned her away from Matthew. And I know that was a mistake now looking back.
Yeah. Well, it's good that you noticed that. And as you were able to, increase or improve the balance sheet, you were able to add that piece back into the relationship of being able to be working towards the passion that you guys have and now kind of doing that together.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, when I look at, and again, I'm very blessed and very fortunate, and I definitely consider myself walking the path now, towards spiritual enlightenment. The most important thing is that nothing was a mistake. I don't look at anything now as, wow, that was a big colossal disaster or a screw up or whatever, that everything is a learning experience. And it's us as humans have to choose to look at it from that perspective, because if we still look at it as, oh my God, that was such a disaster. Oh my God, we made such bad mistakes doing that. Then there's no opportunity to learn from it, because everything that happens to us is a learning opportunity. It's just perception.
I totally agree with that. In the Bible, in the first part of James, it actually talks about how, as we, stumble and as we struggle, it actually draws us closer to God. And so we should, not necessarily look forward to them, but don't fear the failures, don't fear the troubles that will come your way, because during those troubles is when you go closer to God. And I take that same
that's
concept.
100% true. And I don't mean to cut you off.
No, go ahead.
That's 100% true. In my book, I have a whole spiritual fitness subchapter in my book. My book is, written for doctors and patients alike. And obviously I can't get to spiritual enlightenment, woo-woo, whatever you want to classify it as in the book. But I do have a whole subchapter in there. And my credo is the gift is in the and it absolutely is the truth about life. I mean, the struggle and the contrast is the gift. So exactly what you just said in James is absolutely truth. And very few people, unfortunately, as we go through life, really, truly learn that. It's about a version of struggle, a version of tough times. They don't enjoy that. They don't embrace that opportunity. And, we could actually equate it to like the millennial generation of today. And many of them, it's not their fault, but many of them have had life so easy because of, technology and instant gratification. And I always say there's an app for that, I call it the millennial complex. But so many of them, honestly, so many of them do not have a respect for work or, accomplishment because it's been so easy. And a lot of that issue does come from the parents. I know that, as parents myself, Monica has a 22-year-old, a 20-year-old, and a 16-year-old, and I have a 10 and an 8. And, we've seen, the older ones not like have desire or, there's just like a whole lack of focus. But when you talk to them, they're really smart. They're really smart kids. Most of them are really bright. They can manipulate technology. They'll tell you that like, we just feel like we're escaping when we play video games or when we're on our screens or when we're on all these things because we don't feel like there's any reason to do stuff. So it's really, really weird with the disconnect today and how that works. But there's no question, Dan, that the gift and beauty of life is in the struggle.
Yeah, it's definitely in your perspective. And the sooner I think that we learn that, the better we are able to appreciate just every day. Because if we sit around and wait for the perfect day, that's not very likely to ever occur. And then you're left, with not very much of your life left. Jay, I'm interested in the decision that you talked about with the positive outcome, and just maybe tell us a little bit about how you approach that when you're coming into a new company and wanting to make some changes and how the advertising and the marketing was done. Did you have a lot of resistance, or was it kind of one of those things that you were able to just make unilaterally? How did you go about that?
So that's a great question. So when I came to Monica, she had one buyer's agent and a transaction coordinator. And Monica knew when she met me, she knew what I did, for where I was in my previous company. And then just from talking to me, she knew I had a very interesting background. I was in my late 20s and my early 30s. I had made a lot of money, significantly, like multiple millions, investing in the tech stock market, and then also just being a smart guy in the right place at the right time in Los Angeles. I bought houses and properties from, at the bottom in 1994 all the way up to the rise through the dot-com bust in 2001. And I leveraged them. I went from here to there and here to there. And so at one time I was worth a significant amount of money. And by the way, Monica's my third wife. My first wife, I met my ex, and who, again, no bad things. She gave me 2 beautiful daughters, but I was significantly worth a lot of money at 31 years of age. And when I met her, I went to my first wife, who we were kind of in a stuck relationship. It really wasn't. She didn't want children. We weren't growing. And honestly, we just made a lot of money together and just kind of enjoyed life. Didn't enjoy life from the way I wanted to, but we had a lot of money. And I said, look, I met someone, don't get an attorney. I'll give you half. It's going to take me time to, dissolve all these different, real estate ventures and properties that we own. But, once it's happened, I'll just give you cut, minus taxes, you'll get 50%. So she was actually willing to do that. And then, I met my current ex, or brought my current ex into my life, and we were together for 9 years. And as I said, that thing just completely unraveled. But it all unraveled because I was not the right person. I was not a good person. I was not spiritually enlightened or on the path like I feel like I am now. I was all about money and ego and greed and blah, blah, blah. You guys know the story. And, it all unraveled on me. And then I met Monica, who's just an amazing person and very enlightened person. And when she met me, she sensed my heart. She knew that I was very heart chakra, very heart-centered. And she also knew that I had a lot of passion. I had a lot of know-how about the things that I was really good at, which is, at this point now I can say are a great many things. But at that time, it was more about, look, I built companies in the automotive space from a marketing platform side of things. I understand how to build an online brand. I knew how to do all these things. So she was like, well, why don't you do that for me? So, to answer your question today, when I came into this, this was back in the end of 2012, real estate from a marketing standpoint, at least from my opinion, coming from where I came, was backward as hell. At that time, most realtors were still door knocking, phone calling. The whole digital aspect of things was really brand new. I mean, if a realtor was advertising on Zillow in 2012, they were like way ahead of the game. right? So, I kind of looked at that and I said, wow, there's a significant opportunity here. So I did all my things, my super ninja tactics, and, I didn't really have a lot of pushback. I mean, I definitely got pushback from the people that were watching her because she was all mobbed up in the Mike Ferry organization, and her broker was a retail broker. I won't name his name, who also was like, what are you doing? Who is this guy? This doesn't work in real estate, blah, blah, blah. And I was just kind of laughing under my breath because I knew they were clueless and antiquated. So she just let me, honestly, she let me do what I did. And like I said, I mean, the rest is history. I mean, we built up this awesome brand. I have people now, reaching out to me from vendors of all different types of walks of life and social media and digital marketing platforms who say, hey, can we use you as our referring partner or as, the guy when, agents have questions and stuff. So it's all very, very cool. I mean, I'll tell you guys something funny, actually, is the other day I got a call from this huge bank in New York City from like one of the biggest social media companies. I won't name their name, in the reputation management space. And they gave me as a reference. And I was like, what? So it was kind of cool and kind of funny. But, to answer your question today, I had no pushback. Monica had total faith in me. And she knew me again. And we really feel, from a spiritual side of things, like we really honestly do feel like we're twin flames, that we found each other, that we, served many different lives and missions together. If you guys met us, and hopefully someday you will, you'll understand what I'm saying, that like we are literally like two peas in a pod. It's very, very rare when a husband and wife can be so similar and yet so different that they can allow each other, the acquiescence where it's necessary to run like, awesome companies and to build businesses together, but we don't just get in each other's faces and drive each other nuts.
Well, and I think one of the things that I took away from the dynamic of taking, a different approach to your marketing, which has allowed you to be able to be, like you said, explosive, increasing your online reputation, and it's because you guys thought outside the box. You didn't just go to the guy down the street who's did the realtor down the street, because unless you want to be just as good as the realtor down the street, then that's what you have to do. But you have to make those tough and hard decisions to go, you know what? I'm going to think outside the box. I'm going to go outside of my own current space, the car industry, and have them try to figure out how to make this real estate business work even better than the person down the street.
Exactly. Well, Monica will tell you guys, and you guys, by the way, should definitely interview Monica too, because she's, amazing, and she'll do
We'd love to.
Phenomenal interview. But she'll tell you there were a lot of sleepless nights. I wouldn't say nights, but it was mostly mornings for me in the first 4 months of us together. And again, and I always say this, people that become entrepreneurs early and just throw everything into the business without having any fears from, working for the man, quote unquote, being an employee ID number. It's a lot easier because for me, it was like, wow, I'm so used to making X, every couple weeks. And now, I'm looking at like Monica, and I see that she gets like 1 month, she'll have a lot of money come in. And then all of a sudden there's like almost no money come in for 35, 45, 50 days. Now, obviously it's not like that for us anymore. We're much more seamless. But at that time, when I first started working with her and she was doing 30 to 34 transactions, it was different. She'll tell you there were a lot of coaching moments for me in the morning. And she talked me and backed me off the bridge and the ledges many, many times as I would lay there in the morning and say, what am I doing? I can't believe I'm doing this. And it was also, as a man, and this, Dan, like, it's really weird for men. We really look at our lives as kind of like the economic, at least, most men, they look at their lives from the economic impact that they cause or that they provide for their family, especially. And it was like, wait a minute, the checks are going to Monica's name. How am I contributing to this? You know what I mean? So I had to literally like really kill my ego or suppress my ego to really recognize that, hey, I am a part of this, but the way it's being built in her name. And, now to this day, her last name is Campbell. We're married and everything is like amazing and stuff like that. But we still keep her name because we built that brand in the marketplace as that under her name, Diaz. So it's the Monica Diaz team.
Well, it's funny that you say that about your wife and how you guys balance as far as that's concerned, because especially in the mornings, because there's my wife and I, one of our morning rituals is that we go out on our back porch and listen to the waterfall into the pool. That's awesome. And just relax and then just drink a cup of coffee or tea and just talk about the previous day as well as the next day coming up and what's going on. And sure. Many times we're talking about those very same things.
That's awesome. Well, we have very, very regimented morning rituals. I think most successful people today do, right? Because of the distraction of digital bombardment and God knows social media and everything else. She goes out into the backyard with our dogs. We have a pit bull and a little rat dog. I forget what kind of dog he is. And actually, our rat dog is the alpha. I'll send you guys a picture when we get off this thing. I took it this morning. Monica's actually in San Diego with my daughter, Gabby. She had they got out of school Thursday. And so they had this end of school SeaWorld thing. So she's actually on her way back. She's driving right now. She's texting me in the background. But my little rat dog is the alpha, right? I mean, literally, I have this 85-pound beast pit bull, and the rat dog is the alpha and totally calls the shot. So it's hilarious how that works. And I have a picture of him sitting on the big dog's bed, and then the big dog in his little tiny thing all scrunched up.
Yeah, you should definitely send us that photo. I'll put it in the show notes.
Yeah, you guys would have to. It's phenomenal. But no, I mean, Monica goes downstairs with the dogs. She goes out in the backyard. Same thing. We have a forest into the back and a ravine that's behind our house. So we're blessed in that word. So we have tons of nature. She also sun gazes, and then she meditates. And then for me, I'm more about contemplation. My morning ritual is contemplation. I have a mission statement that I've memorized that I say to myself. And then I also use, which I'll be happy to send this to you guys too, I use some brainwave entrainment. It's an app. It's called the Chakra Healing Guides. And it's music that's literally built for each of the 7 chakras. And you can change it. It's 99 cents if you get an advanced form where you get all the different nature sounds that you can add to it. But guys, I use that twice a day, every single day of my life. And I feel like if I don't have that, that's, and by the way, that's kind of my meditation. I know it's contemplation, but it's kind of my meditation too, because I really do silence my mind. And I really do think, what I'm going to do. And sometimes it's as short as 7 minutes, the 7 chakras, 1 minute per chakra. And then other times I'll have time, 25, 30, 40 minutes sometimes, just depending on, what we got to do with the kids and stuff in the morning. But we both have our own separate morning rituals. And I think that helps us because we're not in each other's way and we kind of get our own stuff done,
Right. And it kind of prepares you, I guess, to make any tough decisions that you might face in that particular day. Because sometimes I think the toughest decisions are ones that we just make throughout our daily, we may not even think about them really as being tough, but we're constantly bombarded with, decisions that have to be made. So can you tell our listeners maybe how you approach a really tough decision? Not one just that you might face from day to day, but maybe a really big decision, whether about, direction of one of your businesses or, something that could be really consequential. How do you face that decision? How do you make that decision?
So it's a great question. I appreciate you asking it. So I'm at a place in my life. It's so funny that you just asked me that question. So, because I have a perfect point to segue. I am meeting 2 weeks from yesterday, my 2 business partners. And, I don't know if you guys did any cyber stalking of us, but one of my business partners is one of the biggest entrepreneurs in the whole real estate space, Joshua Smith, who has the GSD Mode podcast. It's the #1 podcast in all the entrepreneur real estate space. It's amazing. If you don't follow it, just go to gsdmode.com and subscribe. He's probably got 70,000 subscribers, but we just hired an A-list, very private. You got to be referred by other, change makers, so to speak, in the space to be vetted by this person. And if she vets you and she says, okay, go, then you can literally, then you can hire her, right? Then you can pay her to basically just completely take over all of your marketing funnels and put you on a path to what she promises is a $10 million company or more. And so I literally just filled out today, because we're meeting with her 2 weeks from yesterday in Newport Beach in an all-day whiteboarding session to discuss what we're going to do with all of our different companies and our businesses and stuff like that, because we're kind of divergent. I mean, we have some amazing things. We have obviously the supplement. We actually have, which I'll be happy to send you guys a bottle. We actually have the #1 over-the-counter nootropic in the world. Now, obviously, I just say that. There's no ranking of that, but I've had a lot of A-list people in the world use it, and no one, doesn't say, wow. So that's a business or a supplement that we should be selling 5,000 bottles a month. And we're not right now because we're just not marketing it effectively. So to answer that question, I'm at a place now where I believe that I literally am being carried by God. And, I don't want to be too woo-woo or religious. I'm not religious. I'm very spiritual. I don't follow any kind of specific earth-based religions, but I don't really worry about anything now because I have overcome the fear of death. I know that, your soul is eternal. It doesn't die. It keeps going. It's infinite, powerful, and energy. And so, through a lot of, mentorship, through the books that I read and where I'm at, I just feel there's no possible way that I struggle over decisions anymore. Now, I once did. I would, like everybody else, I would be, oh my God, what am I going to do? What if this goes wrong? What if this doesn't happen? How am I going to pay for this? I mean, we all have been there. And of course, I've been there. But I made a decision about 1.5 years ago that I was going to stop being fearful. And it's my opinion, and obviously I've learned from great spiritual mentors and books that I read and stuff like that, but it's my opinion that all fear stems from a fear of death. And that when you conquer, and really death is really more of a fear of finite time, because people get so caught up in thinking, oh my God, what if I don't make enough money? Or what if I die and I can't pay for so-and-so? Or what if my grandma, or what if my dad? Or it's just on and on it goes. So it's like, once you can overcome the fear of death, you're not going to really have a fear of decisions. You're not going to have a fear of anything. So, I mean, when I tell people, when they ask me that kind of question, like, well, what are you afraid of? Like, what decision are you afraid of making? I mean, I honestly, truthfully can tell you that I'm not afraid of anything, and that I do live in the now, and that every moment to me is a gift. And I try to derive, and I hate using the word try, right? Because it's do or don't. But I mean, I don't know a better, adjective for that. I choose to attempt to live in joy in every moment. And that doesn't always happen. Of course, there's ickiness in the world, and there's ego, and there's like crazy irrationality, and stuff happens to you that you can't control. But my biggest gift, I think at this point, and I have many, and I'm blessed to have so many as I do, is just the ability to change my state very quickly, to like really look at things from a standpoint of like, wow, that's stupid. It's, thoughts are things. It's just a thought that just went through my head. It doesn't mean anything. Why am I thinking about it? And again, 16 or 17 months ago, I was not where I'm at now. And so this has been a very conscientious, very purpose-driven, very focused effort to get to where I'm at, where it's like, I don't really worry. Like one of the questions in the thing that I just took from this A-list marketing company that's going to be helping us was like, okay, where do you see yourself financially in 10 years? And I swear to God, my answer was, it doesn't matter. The money does not drive me. That I'm so purpose-driven. I could read you guys like I'll just read this to you guys real quick, because this is essentially my mission statement every morning when I wake up. I say, I am joy, I am love, I am gratitude. I see, hear, feel, and know. The purpose of my life's mission is to optimize the health of millions of people. I am powerful, persuasive, and intentional in all that I say and do, in serving God and walking the path towards spiritual enlightenment. I embody and live those words. That's not a woo-woo statement. I really do live that life. You talk to anybody who knows me, who's closer in my inner circle, and they'll tell you that's exactly who I am. So for me now, in the place that I'm at in my life, I really don't even have a thought process of like where I want to be in 10 years, because I'm so focused on being in the moment.
And I think obviously what you stated is that you have a mission that you're driven by. And so wherever that mission takes you, then that's where you're going to be in 20 to 25 years or 10 years.
Exactly. It's absolutely the truth. And I think because of that, because I'm so purpose and mission driven now, I don't have fears or thoughts of like, oh my God, well, I have to make so much money, or, I want to make X, or any of that stuff. Like it's such a non-driver for me. I really, truly do believe that if I continue to carry out my mission, I serve others with peaceful, loving kindness. I smile, I treat everyone equally. I don't judge people. I'm not better than anyone else, regardless. Everybody's soul evolves at its own rate and speed. There's just no possible way that God is going to have me in a path that's not, conducive to being where I'm at, which is, again, living in the now and being in pure joy.
So, Jay, what book would you recommend to our listeners as a book that, they need to read? If they could only choose one, what would you recommend?
Sure. So I'm a voracious reader. I read 8 books a month, and I have actually a club that I'm in with 6 other men. Actually, there's 1 woman, 5 other men, and we hold each other accountable, and we have to pay fines. But, it's hard for me to give one book because I don't know where people are on their path. But if I was to give just one book and said, read this book, it will change your life, it would be Power versus Force by Dr. David Hawkins.
Okay, great. Power versus Force. Okay, cool. Well, we'll make sure we put that in the show notes as well. I have 2 more questions for you, which is, this is partly some of the most fun questions that I like to be able to kind of have in here. Obviously you've been, on both sides of the scale and both sides of the spectrum as far as money is concerned. And at this point, like you said, money's not the driving force, but, can you kind of tell us what's the most exciting thing that you've done with the money that you've made up to this point?
Good question. Man, I don't even know. Just the fact, probably now that Monica and I, 16 months ago, same time when I decided to stop living in fear of anything, it killed my sense of fear of death and all that. We decided that we were going to travel to an exotic destination every 8 weeks. And it did not matter, what life got in the way, what business things happened. I mean, we would plan the vacations and buy them and pay for them. And then we would just we would go on them no matter what. And, if we had to organize things or, work and maneuver around it, the vacation wouldn't be killed.
So where are you going next?
So we're literally going to Thailand in 2 weeks.
Awesome. Where'd you go 6 weeks ago?
Where were we? We were in Cabo San Lucas.
Awesome. That is awesome. Yeah. Thailand is definitely one of my spaces that I want to go as well. Another one that you might want to put on your list if you haven't already done it is the Azores, right off the coast of Portugal.
I have not been to the Azores, but I appreciate that tip. We're definitely going to later this year. Well, actually, we're going to Puerto Vallarta in August, and then it's either going to be Lima, Peru in December or Costa Rica. So it's one of those two in December.
That is awesome. Well, what's the number one item on your bucket list right now?
Man, I don't really have one. I wish I could tell you that I had one, just to continue to live in peaceful, loving kindness, embracing the moment, honoring the people that, I feel blessed to, serve, which is, anybody who comes to me and asks me for help and trying to get optimized. I'm just so non-materially motivated or concerned now with my life that I really don't have one. Just, probably just to continue what I'm doing, which is to make sure that Monica and I can continue to travel the world and that we can maintain our physical health.
Is there one area in the world that you really want to go to and that's really kind of like on the bucket list? Or are you kind of like doing that as your bucket list as you're going throughout these different 8-week destinations?
I think that's how we're going to kind of do it. I mean, a long time ago, I played basketball overseas for a little less than a year, and I was blessed to travel throughout Europe. I was involved in the first Japan-American Grassroots Summit when I was in college, and so I got a chance to spend 6 weeks in Japan, and I've traveled all across Japan and all the different countries in Japan through the bullet train. I climbed halfway up Mount Fuji. So I've been very blessed to travel the world and see a lot of different things. So I don't have a specific country. I haven't been to Australia, and the person that we are working with right now happens to be Australian. She's in Newport Beach in Australia. So she's like every 2 months she moves between both places. So
that's awesome. Thank you so much for being on the podcast with us today, Jay. I know it takes some time out of your schedule, but I really do appreciate it, and I know our listeners do as well. How can our listeners reach out to you if they have further questions or they want to get some more information about you to try to see, after they listen to the podcast, what you can provide them or help them with?
Yeah, for sure. If you send me an email, and I'll give you my social spots too, but if you send me an email to j@trtrevolution.com, well, I'll be happy to send you a free PDF version of any of my books. So, the Metabolic Blowtorch Diet is like the number one book on Amazon.com right now for fasting, intermittent fasting, and actually optimizing intermittent fasting. It's not advanced, but it's an amazing lifestyle book to lose body fat. And then, of course, I'll also send you copies of the first two books, the most recent book, which is the Testosterone Optimization Therapy Bible. And then the very first book, which is actually the number one selling book of all time on testosterone optimization, which is called the Testosterone Replacement Therapy Manual.
And I'll make sure I include your email on our show notes as well for the listeners so they can make sure they get that down to be able to get those copies.
Absolutely. And then you can find me on Twitter. I'm very, very big on Twitter. I do a lot of posting on Twitter. I kind of stay away from social media now, but I feel like I make the most impact on Twitter, and you can follow me at TRT Expert on Twitter. I am on Facebook, but I'm maxed out. We're about to be much bigger on Instagram, but I won't be involved on Instagram. If you really try to reach me, it's just j@trtrevolution.com, which will eventually get to me, especially if it's pressing. And then, just find me on Twitter. You can send me a message on Twitter.
Well, we really appreciate you again, Jay, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.
And you guys, thanks for having me on your show. I truly appreciate it. You guys have a great weekend. Congratulations on the new baby.
All right. Thank you so much. You too.
Do you want to nominate a highly successful entrepreneur or real estate investor to be a guest on this show? Email us at dan@toughdecisions.net. Help us by spreading the word about our show with your friends. And also take time right now to subscribe and leave a review on iTunes, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, or your favorite platform. You've been listening to The Tough Decisions Show.